When life goes sideways at home, at work, with the kids, what version of you shows up? Are you the one who calms the chaos? Are you the one that admits your mistakes when you were the one that caused it? Are you the one who restores order? Well, those things and many more are what we're talking about today. This is Dad's Place. Welcome to Dad's Place. We're a new podcast, and we're about making dads better men because we believe better men make a better world. And just to lay it out off the top, we're not perfect. We screw things up. But the thing we've learned is that talking about our failures is how we grow and do better in the future. Hey, Sean, in your world, what separated men who lasted from the men who flamed out?
Priorities and discipline. When your priorities are squared away and in the right order, then you instill self-discipline. So those two things are things that'll make anything last, but definitely when it comes to what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, and that's the baseline of the show. We're talking about a lot of things that keep that discipline and keep those priorities straight. You know, our show's called Dad's Place, Men Who Step Up. And what we're referring to when we say men who step up, we're talking about the men that don't disappear. We're talking about the ones who keep their word, the ones who show up when they're tired, the one who apologizes when they're wrong, the one who protects their family. You know, really the one who doesn't outsource his leadership as the man in the house or the man in the world. Sean, when did you fail at one of those?
Is that a trick question?
Yeah, we'll call it a trick question.
The question should be, when did I not? That's the more pertinent question. You're going to fail all the time. You're going to fail after you promised you wouldn't fail, and you're going to do it again. It's just about repetition, and eventually things start falling into place from a priority level. I'll go back to that, priorities and discipline. And when you're going to start seeing your failures get less and less and less when your discipline and your priorities are in the right order.
So when you found yourself failing at one of those, what changed after you figured that out?
Outlook. Just when you figure out your priorities and you get it squared away, you realize that it's no longer about self. It's about others. It's about serving. It's about making everything else around you good, doing everything with that. And here's the crazy thing. When you figure that stuff out and everything else around you, who benefits the most? You.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, just want to clear something up. I am not a biological father, but I have had quite a few kids, teens, young adults who have lived in my house for extended period of times. The reason they were there is that they were going through a season in their life where things just weren't working out in their world and they needed a place to go. And we had them at our house. So I learned to be a dad to them when they were in a season where they just needed a dad. They just needed somebody to listen to them, somebody to give them some advice, somebody to kind of get them back on track. But that experience kind of changed what I thought my definition of fatherhood was, because I had only experienced a very traditional father in the way I grew up, but made me really think about and realize that, you know, dads are more than just biological. I mean, there's stepfathers, there's adopted dads, there are grandfathers, there's uncles, there's did I say foster dads? Foster dads, coaches, mentors. You know, these are all men who stepped into somebody's life. And that's what we're talking about. Men who step into somebody's life when they really need somebody there in that role of a dad. Sean, your story's not the same as mine. Maybe that's what makes us great together, because we really come from two different areas. Tell a little bit about yours.
Well, my grandparents raised me, so I'm from a broken home at a young age of 3 days. So that's what I know. I mean, my grandparents were my parents, basically. So I know that. But then transitioning as I got older, when I got married, I adopted my wife's daughter, and then I had a son. So as a blended family, and then we had a son together. So we kind of we kind of crossed the gauntlet of a whole bunch of things. You throw in, something else you said, you throw in, coaches and things like that. Being a sports kid that I was, I definitely had coaches that steered me in the right direction at a time when I needed it the most.
Yeah, and that's kind of the baseline of this show. That is, what we're trying to share with you today is the who, what, why, and how of the show. One thing you're going to hear us talking about sometimes is faith. It's just naturally going to show up. We both live and view the world from a Christian worldview. We're not here to preach at you. We're not here to tell you what you're doing wrong. We're just letting you know where we come from. It kind of shapes us, shapes who we are and how we look at failure and how we look at the redemption of that failure. And, it sets our standards for us. It is also has a lot to do with how we want to treat people and be treated. And it's where we base a lot of our decisions. So you may hear that from time to time. Sean, we've talked about this a bunch. How does that change things for you, on a day-to-day type thing?
Well, it shapes everything I do from, what I say, what I think, what I look at, who I surround myself with, where I go. It just encompasses everything because you have to really guard yourself, your mind, uh, with a lot of the stuff that the world is shoveling your way.
Absolutely. Well, coming up on the show in the future, we're going to have lots of topics to talk about. And just to kind of give you a little preview, some of the things we're going to talk about, obviously, we're going to talk about being a dad and in any one of those roles as a dad. We're also going to talk about manhood and marriage and kids. Man, kids is a wide open story because no kid's the same. And, there's lots of funny things that happen, but man, there's some serious stuff you got to deal with. So we're going to talk a lot about kids. We're going to talk a lot about work pressure, uh, how much we are defined by what we do sometimes. We're going to talk about the expectations that we have for ourselves and sometimes how way out of whack those are. We're going to talk about comparing ourselves to others. We're going to talk about financial stress. We're going to talk about leadership and anger. And we're going to talk about failure and motivation. You know, one of the things that I'm going to ask, I'll let Sean, I'm going to put you on the spot here, buddy. Okay. So of that list, which one of these hits home the most? No, let me ask it this way. Which one hits most men first? I'll save you for next, but of the list we just talked about, which one hits most men first?
Stress and pressure. Stress really screws people up. I think that's not a man thing. That's not a dad thing. That's a people thing. Stress just, it wrecks people, whether it doesn't matter if it's mental, physical, emotional, psychological, it wrecks people. And then when you add certain things in your life where you feel pressure, whether it's, I got to make X amount of money to feed my family. I've got to help out my aging parents. I've got a sister that's this, or I've got a child that's, man, there's so many things. And when you feel that pressure on you, it is just setting on your shoulders. You add that with stress and that's a combustible mixture.
Yeah, I've told you this story before. I had a doctor who said he can't prove it and he doesn't have the research for it, but he'd be willing to bet his medical license on the fact that 60 to 65% of all illnesses are based off some form of stress. Hey, I've been under it. I've seen it. I can't disagree with that assumption. What of that list? Okay, here you go, Sean. I'm putting you on the spot, buddy. What of that list? Which one's toughest for you?
Which one's the toughest for me now?
No, yeah, we can go now. Let's go now. Let's go in the past. Let's go in the past first. Which one was toughest for you in the past?
Well, it's anger. Well, it still is. That's what gets me is I'm a self-admitted, so I'm not a hypocrite when it comes to this. I'm a self-admitted, I have an anger issue. People generally make me angry. But I mean, I've gotten better as I've gotten older, and I've gotten wiser with age and experience and things like that. But every once in a while, that old monster will rear its ugly head. So from a personal standpoint, I would say anger.
Yeah, that's when we refer to you as the Tasmanian devil when that shows up.
Yeah, it's not pretty. It's definitely not a side of me. I'm generally don't get up the next morning and go, man, I'm so glad I did that.
So which on that list do you think is the one that wrecks men the fastest if ignored? If it's something they ignore, what is it of that list is going to wreck their life first or fastest?
Make them as a surprise to people, but leadership, because that's such a heavy topic. If you get married as a youngster, or you have a child as a youngster, or you're in a profession where it's a dog eat dog world, and you've got to exhibit leadership, initiative, the go getter, the guy or the gal that doesn't need your hand held. Well, man, leadership is hard, and then you factor it in when it comes to families. Man, that's hard when you got a wife that looks to you, and when you got children who look to you, and your dad, man, your dad, you're the guy, and that goes back to you're leading your family, and then you have the stress and the pressure to do that. That's it's a daunting task. It really is.
Yeah, and don't you think that leadership it shows up in every aspect? I mean, it's not just family, it's not just work. It's it's kind of how you hold yourself in the public view. I guess is probably the easiest way to say it. I can look at somebody and know, hey, that guy's got it together, and he feels comfortable in his skin, and then he feels comfortable being the leader if he has to be. Not everybody makes a great leader, but leadership and being a great leader are not the same. I think it's a mentality. One of the other ones on this list that comparisons. We have talked about this. How many guys spend time looking at, going down the Facebook or whatever social media out there that you might use? How many guys end up going on there and comparing what they see to what their life is? And you know, we won't even go into it for right now. We'll talk about this another time, but we know everything on the internet is true, right, Sean? Everything you see is exactly how it is.
Well, I mean, like 10 minutes ago, while you were talking a minute ago, Bigfoot stopped by at the window here and asked me if I had anything to eat. So, but the internet told me he was coming by tonight. So, of course, it's true.
Absolutely. And you know that guy that's got a picture of himself next to that brand new Ferrari, he just bought that. Yeah. It's not he's not just walking down the street and took that picture. So yeah, I think subconsciously though, we all do it a little bit. We see something somebody else has and we're like, why don't I have that? Why do they have that? And so I think comparisons, it's much more, it's probably always been there. I think it's probably more prevalent now in society than ever before because you know, that's what people are doing. They're putting their best stuff out there. And if you don't remember that as you're looking at it, you're automatically thinking, man, why don't I have what that guy has? So I think all those are, I mean, they're all issues that will wreck you in a heartbeat. And I think they're all issues that men deal with all the time. So Sean, one of the things on here, and you can ask me mine and I'll ask you yours, but which one was your kryptonite? I mean, you may have already, I think you kind of mentioned it a little bit. Well, you did mention it.
Yeah, anger. I, but I will say this I'll put a little caveat on anger. Anger is very deceiving. You don't really think you're an angry person, or you don't really think you have an anger issue, because it only rears itself in your mind. It only rears itself in a very, very, very ugly way. But it's also in how you view something, whether it's a person, whether it's a thing, whether it's a place, whether it's an idea, whatever. And something wells up inside of you that causes blood pressure digits to go up, and fluctuations in your head, and you don't really, but you would say, I don't have an anger issue. Really? You might want to check that. So that's mine. It's probably going to be mine until they stick me in a box. But I will say I'm much better now. And most people, when you hear this, if you have an anger issue, obviously work on it, whatever age you're at. but it tends to get better as you get older.
You mellow out a little bit.
Well, you have a different perspective on life. I'll go back to initially, your priorities and your discipline changes. When you're in your 20s, your priorities and your discipline, and there are outliers, but it's kind of all over the map. But when you get in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, it's generally, for most people, it's generally squared away.
Well, that's just a little preview of one of the topics we'll have come up. Like I said, there's plenty we'll have coming up in the future. Why we're doing this show? Sean and I both have had mentors throughout our lives and in different roles. I mentioned my dad. I grew up kind of in the traditional biological dad situation. Sean had his granddad, but I think outside of those, Sean had mentioned coaches. Some coaches were mine, but I've also had some men in my life who knew me, who had invested time in me, and I'd invested time in them. And they were a little bit older than me. They'd lived a little more life than me, and they gave me a lot of input on some things I could do better and some of the things I was doing wrong. I don't know if I can ever verbalize how important that was to me. And Sean, outside of the coaches and your grandfather, where did you where did those people come in for you?
Well, the biggest influence in my life was a family that moved. It was the pastor and his family that moved close to me. I mean, I had coaches, and obviously had my grandfather and my grandmother, but one particular family, they played a major, major. When I say, I can't say the word major enough. They played a major role in developing me when I needed it the most, from a Christian perspective, but also as a young man perspective. Things are changing, man. All kind of things. You got these little feelings coming about you, and it was just a big, big help to have that family.
Well, I hope some of our future shows we can bring on some of our mentors. Unfortunately, some of mine have passed away, and I really miss them a lot, but I still have some out there I'd like to bring on the show. Having a mentor is kind of like the old saying, iron sharpens iron. It's just another man who can look at you, who you can respect, and they can be honest with you. And I think that's just so important, not only as a dad, but as a dad who wants to be a better man. I think that's so important. We hear the individualistic lone wolf kind of thing is the big thing to have. And, that's makes a pretty picture and a great movie, but that's not life. I mean, none of us can do it on our own. We need help from other people. So, that's the why. That's why we're doing it. We're passing it forward. We're paying it forward to share hopefully some things and some wisdom we've learned with some other people out there who maybe don't have a mentor, or maybe we can tell them, Sean, a little bit how to find a mentor, how to find those people in your life. Sometimes it's just a matter of asking people you already know. So we'll get into that a little bit later on in the upcoming podcast. One of the things I want to make sure you understand, we're not counselors, we're not ministers, we're not miracle workers. You're going to have to do the hard work, but hopefully we can point you in some directions that tell you where the work needs to be done. And we can share with you about the work that we've had to do in our own lives, and some of the funny stuff we've done and some of the dumb stuff we've done. There's probably not enough space out there to record all of that. So we'll have to pick and choose from those things. We're not really a political show. We're not really a sports show or a news show, but we'll talk about some of those things. I mean, we're here to talk about life. That's what we're here to talk about. So, hey, we're glad you joined us. If you got a topic, yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Wait a minute. I'm a little upset, and
Why?
I'm gonna voice my. You told me whenever you decided to do this podcasting, you told me this miracle worker thing was like legit. What are you even talking about right now?
I just told you that I told you that because you were angry that day.
My bad.
Yeah, I was trying to calm you down. That
Proceed.
that Tasmanian devil was coming out. I
Proceed.
was I was just trying to calm you down. So, uh, but just remember that better dads make better people, and better men. And we're here to talk about our failures and to share some of yours. And if you have a topic you want us to talk about, or if you have a question, doesn't matter. You can tell us you hate us. It's all right. We're good with that. We can handle it. Sean might get a little angry, but I can calm him down. It's no big deal. But hey, thanks for watching. This is Dad's Place, men who step up.